What's up, family? Welcome back to the Stop Sinking Show, where we go from struggle to flow. Full disclosure, my skin is dry as hell in New York, and the metaphor of itching actually comes from a literal place. But because my brain likes to make weird connections while I'm trying to sleep, I wanted to talk about the itch as a metaphor for impulse control. If you have listened to Hormozi or mentioned me talk about the study that he quotes, he talks about the 3 attributes of a successful person. And I talked about the first 2 on a past episode, 237, about superiority complex. There are 3 things that make a person successful, the study says. Having a superiority complex, feeling superior that you are better than someone else. At the same time, and counterintuitively, having an inferiority complex. This is where you still have the polar opposite voice in you that keeps that superior one in check and keeps you a student and always learning and working hard. The last one is impulse control. And this was out of the scope of that last episode, but I wanted to explore it further here today using the metaphor of the itch. Impulse control, I believe, enables the whole thing. If you can't apply impulse control, delayed gratification, the ability to focus and eliminate distractions, and chasing every squirrel and every shiny object, if you can't apply this, then no matter what qualities you may have, you probably will not be able to make any of them work well enough for you. And I'm somebody who definitely has to manage the itch. It's not that I'm impulsive by any means. I like to overthink everything, but something is inside of me that has the itch sometimes to say something that I know I shouldn't say. One of my favorite rap lines go, "Tongue on the devil's pitchfork to see how disaster tastes." See, there are many times that I know I should save my opinion, my feedback, my criticism, or my rebuttal. But there's something inside of me that itches and doesn't allow for that to happen. Many times my brain does the calculation of the consequences of saying that thing, or the resentment of years from having to keep my mouth shut, and then I fall prey to the itch's insistence. I just gotta scratch the itch. But I can't say this is a wise strategy. A lot of times, a lot of success in life comes from having the discernment about what to do when the stimuli is presented in front of you. Is it something that you should do something about? Should you delete or delegate? Whether you should follow your initial interest in that thing, or is it something that's distraction? Again, a lot of this comes from knowing what that you are trying to get traction on in the first place. When you have clear goals and you're headed towards something, then it becomes easier to have that discernment whether the thing that you are about to indulge in is actually moving you towards that thing or it's taking you away and off that track. Distraction, the opposite of traction, headed towards your track, your goal. This is an important question to ask yourself when the itch comes. Should you scratch it? Should you let it itch and feel the burn for a bit while you try to ignore it and it'll go away? Or should you look deeper into the ultimate cause of why it keeps itching in the first place? Sometimes the right answer is to scratch it. Maybe the itch is something that is biting you at that exact moment, and the sting is meant to awaken you to pay attention to the itching part. All sensations are messengers, right? So maybe your first step is to investigate, scratch, and then look past that into whether to continue expending energy in that direction, or should you try another strategy after you have assessed the situation. A lot of times, though, it is regulation of our impulses that leads to greater success. Self-mastery in emotional intelligence does not exist without self-regulation, right? It's self-awareness and then self-regulation, people awareness and people regulation. It is not enough to just know something. You have to be able to apply that thing. And it's easier to know. It is harder to live out what you know. Emotional regulation is not just very important when dealing with your own impulses, but the triggers or impulses that come up when you're interacting with other humans is very important to try and manage if you are ever to have successful relationships. regulating the insistence, the impulses put upon us, the itches we feel, the need to scratch in that second might only be a momentary itch that would actually serve your future self better to not scratch. Many of the time still, if you're ever to get less triggered over time and eventually have to deal with less itches altogether, what it will come from is soothing the environment to the point where it is healthy and nourished and less likely to irritate you out of your peace. So we talked about sometimes the right answer is to scratch it, other times is to regulate it, but many times to not have itches over time requires you to think about what environment is causing for that itch to happen in the first place. It's easier to avoid the cookies if you just don't have the cookies in the house. It would be much harder to regulate, or at least deplete valuable willpower daily if you walked by a box of chocolates multiple times a day. It would take one moment of weakness for you to fall off of your goals. One squirrel and you're headed in the wrong direction. Some itches are really about getting to the root cause and uprooting it. Why do I feel the need to insert my opinion here? Why do I feel the need to retaliate or have a knee-jerk reaction to this? What information can I gather from my emotional triggers that I need to understand and manage? What are they telling me about me? What am I running away from when I'm pulled towards this new shiny object? And what am I expecting it to solve that I'm not getting currently? Maybe I feel bored in the thing that I'm doing, not realizing that eventually the thing that I'm pursuing, the squirrel, the distraction, will also eventually lead to boredom when I get deep enough into it. A lot of our impulses have been honed over time, maybe not carefully or deliberately, but practiced over and over again. And we've learned to cope with many of the things that call out to us with what are now habitual responses. From some of us, we reach for our phones, others our wallets, others substances and other forms of dependencies. Each one of them are triggered by our hidden impulses, causing us to behave in a patterned manner, and other impulses that keep us from having any predictable patterns at all, ones that make us erratic and haphazard in our approaches, really impulsive. Impulses, nonetheless, insistent as ever. All of them holding us back from being and behaving the way that we could through conscious choices. All of them keeping you from all of you. I love you, family. Stay true always. I'll see you on the next show.